Welcome to Poland Daily History with me, Nicholas Richardson. In these episodes, we're looking at two men who had a fundamental effect on the future of the country which became the United States. Indeed, as Will has told us in previous episodes, without them there may not have been a United States. I'm talking, of course, about Kazimierz Pulaski and Tadeusz Kościuszko. And in the studio, to discuss these two remarkable characters, I'm joined by my colleague Will Richardson. Will, welcome back. In the previous episode, we had a general introduction as to why these two military men were so significant. Now perhaps we can actually delve into the detail a bit more. And let's start with Pulaski.
Okay, that's fine. Or Pulaski.
Yes, as the Americans call him.
We call him Pulaski. And it should be said that it's important to call him Pulaski in the United States because we have 7 counties that are named for him. One of those, of course, and I'm not sure if it's a nuclear submarine, but a large submarine also bears his name. Although, as far as I know, submarines have nothing to do with the cavalry, but leave that alone. They should name a bunch of helicopters after him.
That would be more appropriate.
Would be more appropriate. At any rate, the story I wanted to tell is of kind of starting at the end, because he died in the Battle of Savannah.
He did.
I mean, everybody knows that, if you know anything about Pulaski. And you should, because he's, an absolutely seminal figure in American military history and in Polish and European military history because of his brilliance as a cavalry officer. In fact, you could say he wrote the book on cavalry, literally, and tactics.
Indeed.
So it's still in use today. I mean, Patton, the great General George S. Patton, was a huge fan of Pulaski, and he used his tactics in commanding his tanks in the Second World War. How about that?
That's amazing, isn't it?
It is amazing, the influence of the man who died at 32 years old. Okay, but the fact that he died at 32 years old is tied to the story I want to tell you. He died in the Battle of Savannah. I had an ancestor who was fighting under Pulaski and did not die in the battle, but was taken prisoner and sent to Charleston, where he spent the remainder of the war on a British prison ship. So, also not a nice way to spend the remainder of your war. It may not have been the remainder, I have to check that, but it was certainly a while. I think they may have, made him sign something and say he's not going to fight anymore. But at any rate, Pulaski, I had an ancestor who knew Pulaski and fought under him. I mean, back then the armies weren't that big. You would see the general, they were just... there he is, he's riding his horse.
Exactly, the cavalry was particularly small, in fact.
The cavalry was small, But, it's the same thing from the American Civil War, that back then the soldiers would have had their own horse. They would have taken their own horse, and often they were, gentlemen farmers, as in this case, and they take their own horse, and they just serve in any capacity. They don't have to be officers. They may be gentlemen, but they don't. It doesn't mean they'll be officers, because they have a horse. To be in the cavalry itself is quite an honor. So, as opposed to being a foot soldier, which was essential, but not as glamorous. Glamorous.
And the cavalry always had, in the British Army, the cavalry always had the best uniforms.
That's right. Now, I'll tell you another interesting story, if I may, about Pulaski and the connection with his death in Savannah, because there was a fellow called Marion C. Cooper who made a lot of films, including King Kong. And she wore a yellow ribbon, and he was the first man ever in the 1920s to make wildlife documentaries, if you will. And I suppose what's really essential to, or makes the connection between Pulaski and America and Poland, and then moving forward in military history, is that Marion C. Cooper's ancestor actually did help Pulaski in his last moments or on, well, not in his last moments, but on the battlefield, because he was shot by grape shot and he was carried off. But on the battlefield, he was there, Marion C. Cooper. And that's why Marion C. Cooper felt a need to help Poland and organized the Kosciuszko Squadron. It wasn't the Pulaski Squadron. It was the Kosciuszko Squadron. That was the choice of the Poles to call it that. At the in the battle against Russia in 1920-21 war, which we are now celebrating.
Indeed, it's the centenary this year.
The centenary, right? So. A lot of things to throw in this stew and stir it around, but so I wouldn't be the first person to feel a connection because of Pulaski, and I think a lot of Americans, not just Polish Americans, feel that he is a very important figure.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to have to stop you there, but we'll be back for another episode. Don't panic. As usual, the clock's defeated us. There's a lot more to hear about these two amazing characters. So do join us again on the next episode of Poland Daily History.